I had to, quote unquote, know who I was and love myself to keep hold of another person. So therefore, at the root of that is not self-love.
What is it for you that one day you woke up and thought, I need to go on this self-love journey, so to say?
It wasn't that conscious. So I didn't have the vocabulary to be like, this is self-love, this is what I'm doing. I find it interesting when I look at my own, because there was a point when I tried to go down this road where what I'm on now, and it wasn't authentic, in the sense of, for me, I had to, quote unquote, know who I was and love myself to keep hold of another person. So therefore, at the root of that is not self-love. So I was reading these books because I didn't want to be insecure, because the insecurity wasn't working in that dynamic. So then I was like, okay, well, I've got to love myself to keep this person. That's literally how mine started. But it wasn't the real deal. That was the first part of the journey. And then, as that relationship with that person, wasn't in my life anymore, then I started to do the real work, if that makes sense.
So you feel... So your relationship hit a point where it was already degrading, and so in that point you're like, maybe there's something wrong with me. So you start... Is that what you're saying?
No, because, okay, the concept of insecurity, sometimes it's not actually present, but let's say it's projected as something that you are about. So then what's at the root of insecurity? Lack of self-love, lack of self-esteem. But then that was the catalyst. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah.
So then I would read the books and I would do this because I'm like, well, because I'm being insecure and it's not fruitful for this connection now, it's causing a problem, I'm going to look at my insecurity. Why am I insecure? And then you pick up certain books and then it starts from there. I'm not saying it wasn't part of the journey, because the journey is continuous. There's not really a real, you can't put a line into different sections of your life like it's, a best-selling book. It doesn't work like that. It's real life. But that's something that stood out. And I remember being like, when I actually got into the different phase, like that other stuff that I was doing before, that work that I thought I was doing, just preparation for this bit now.
So before we get into this bit now, just want to because relationships, like how, okay, so let's double back a second. So how we view ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, it's very difficult to detach that from outside validation. So what a lot of people find is within relationships, they have a level of validation.
Yep.
And then it's kind of difficult to exist without that. So, but you saying in your relationship, you discovered you were insecure. So is that to say your partner at the time wasn't feeding you in terms of the things he said to you, the way he treated you, or was that what the dynamic? Or
no? And that's what shows you that it's you.
Yeah.
No matter what another person can say or do, if that bond with self is weak, then it's weak. I've been on the other end of that, when I've poured so much motivation, support, encouragement, love into a person, but because they are not there, they do not. How can, it's cliche, but how can somebody love you if you do not love yourself? How can you receive that love if you're not even there? People can only meet you where you have met yourself. Like, it works that way as well. Yeah, there's a lot we could explore with that, to be honest.
Yeah. And so you come out of this relationship and you say that's when the real work started. So what was the real work, or what is the real work?
You touched on it before, that validation. I'm very much now into connection rather than attachment. So when you have relationships that are centered on attachment, then of course, that I'm not saying I'm at zero and no one doesn't need to validate me in any way, shape or form, because then I'll be a robot. I'm real, you know what I mean? But it's like, when I came out of that, my story is when I came out of that, the real work started, because solitude is my thing. It is my tool of self-care, because when I'm in that solitude, I cannot run to anyone for this validation. I cannot, there's different levels of all this validation, okay? But I don't need a cosign on so much stuff. It's not always been easy. It's not like, oh, I came out of that and all of a sudden I validate myself internally. But I'm very much now an intrinsically like motivated person. I do what I need to do because it feels good to me. It feels right. So intuition is really important, that internal voice, knowing what's right, what's wrong for you. It's been a process over years, of course, to reach this point, to do some of the things that, you know, I do, you know, outwardly for others in the community and within myself. So it's not overnight.
Yeah, so how, okay, like you said, at the end of the day, we're only human, so the outside world will still have an influence. But how can you get to that point where you're, let's say, 80% there, where you're 80% self-validating? What did you do to get to that point?
Okay, it's ugly, it's not pretty, you're going to cry, you're going to be confused, but you are going to have to dig deep inside of yourself and be like, okay, I need to be self-full, fill myself with me, okay? What is me? What's at the foundation? Because if certain parts of myself are there, but they're not being, you know, utilized or stimulated, or you have to just do that, whether that's, you know, research into self through trying out new things, putting yourself out of your comfort zone, engaging with new people, going to different places, whatever it is for you. So for me, the spoken word did it, because, you know, people do journaling, they do meditation, and some people might argue that those things are part of that also. But going within you in the way that works for you, you have to go with it, because you can read all the books you want, etc. But it's, are you actually going to actualize the new theories that you've read about? Because self-love, a lot of people are theorizing it and they're not living it. That's where I'm at now with some of my thinking. So even for me, 2019 is like, okay, we're stepping the game up and we are putting these things that we can talk about all day into practice, you know? So touching on relationships and validation, how do you really know if you've done that work and learned that lesson until you engage with people in the same way that you may have before? Or else, what is it? It's just a theory.
So within your self-love journey, have you had moments where you veer away? So, you know, you're like, you hit a point where I'm like, okay, I don't rely on validation from others. I'm feeling good about my life, where my life is going. Like, do you have moments where you kind of just veer left from self-love?
So in a sense that my new real, because I think it's a continuous thing, you always getting these new, you know, downloads, as I call it, of information. So validation cannot really be completely healed at all until you put yourself in contact to the sources, the types of, you know, things that were validating you, whether it's, you know, other people, material, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, you have to, you know, be involved with that. So definitely, like, walking into, my thing is relationships. They teach, love is a teacher, in my opinion. Been so many life changing and, you know, engagement that has really come from relationships. This self-love thing is, people put it across, is you, it's you, it is you. You have to do the work. You have to do the realization. You have to do the processing, the actualization. But you cannot do the test in a way alone, if that makes sense. So definitely the choices that I have made, and the, when things naturally maybe would have fallen away, if you are still clinging to a validation, you're not going to let them things go. For example, letting go to me is a revealer. How easily, in terms of connection, attachment, those two things I was talking about before, are you operating from a, you know, your lower self? Are you working with attachment or your higher self, which for me would be, you know, connection?